Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cedric Brown. I am the Senior Manager of Post Office Operations for the Bay Valley District. On behalf of the Postal Service and Congressman Mark DeSaulnier in the city of Richmond, we'd like to thank you for coming out to support this momentous occasion in the renaming of the Richmond Post Office in honor of Harold D. McCraw to the Harold D. McCraw Post Office. And now we'll have recognition of our guests by Mr. Sunil Channon, Postmaster of the Richmond Post Office.
Thank you, Cedric. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today on beautiful sunny afternoon for a very special occasion. I'm so pleased to be with you this afternoon and to have the chance to recognize our guest. But before I do that, I just want to share something about Mr. McCraw. In 119 years Richmond Post Office history, Mr. McCraw was the longest serving postmaster of Richmond Post Office. He served for 24 years as the postmaster of Richmond Post Office. Wow, what an amazing accomplishment. Without taking more time, let me recognize our honorable guest. We have Honorable Congressman Mr. Mark DeSaulnier, Mayor Mr. Tom Bott, City of Richmond, Demolos Johnson, Richmond City Council, John Carpenter, Supervisor, Eduardo Martinez, Richmond City Council, and John Gioia. We also have Annie Jones and Howard McCraw Jr., the family member of Mr. McCraw Sr. Alice Belton, family member. Joel Fisher, friend. Bob Campbell, former assemblyman and friend. Chris Golden, former retired Hayward postmaster. Larry Burns, retired former host postmaster of Oakland. And let me introduce our district manager, Mr. Robert Reynosa, for his remarks and welcome address. Mr. Robert, sir. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. What a great turnout. Well, it's a tremendous honor for me to represent the United States Postal Service as we gathered today to pay tribute to one of our own. Dedicating a post office for a community leader takes on a whole different meaning when that person is a former postmaster. And as a former postmaster myself, I stand here with great pride. A postmaster has a special place in communities all across America. Just as a post office serves as the center of that community, a post office is more than the four corners set in concrete. It's about the people. It's about the people that bring it to life, that handle the mail that surges through it. Harold McCraw is very similar to many who came to the post office at an early age looking for a job and realized that the United States Postal Service is not only a great place to work, but a great place to do business. In our very beginning, some 242 years ago, many people came to us looking for their first job and soon realized that it was a place to build a strong, steady, and rewarding career as a public servant. It's not uncommon for our workers to stay with us 50 years or more. Harold McCraw was just such a young man who came to the post office to build a career and to serve his community. The fact that a lifelong resident who dedicated his life to the service of the community and worked tirelessly to improve the lives of the people around him, makes this especially fitting to have his name permanently attached to this post office. A post office that is the cornerstone of the community where people come together with others through the mail. Every day, our trusted postal employees touch the lives of Richmond residents through the faithful completion of their appointed rounds and through the daily transactions that they have with our customers. The post office from the very beginning was created to connect and bind the country together. Harold McCraw exemplified the meaning of that charter and served as the glue that held the post office and this community together. I'm very proud to be able to bestow the post office, a symbol of unity and pride, to a man who exemplified the virtues of community service. A post office building is a symbol of strength and trust. It represents a sense of normalcy in America and serves as an icon to the world that American values are as resolute as the man whose name will forever be attached on its walls. Harold D. McCraw, Sr. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reynosa and Sunil for the remarks. Next, we'll have remarks from the Honorable Congressman Mark DeSaulnier.
First, I want to acknowledge my terrific staff here and the staff in DC who've been working on this for quite a while, very hard. And Chanel Scales Preston, if you could raise your hand, who's our terrific district director. And Jessica, standing next to Chanel, who spends a lot of time in the Richmond office, and promised me that it wouldn't rain today. So looks like you delivered. Nice going. And then I want to thank all the postal employees who are here and the hard work that you do, often under difficult circumstances. I do want to thank a few of my colleagues. I'm in the Oversight Committee, which this bill went through. And for those of you who were with us 3 or 4 years ago when we introduced the first bill, picking that up from Congressman George Miller, who represented Richmond for 40 years in the Congress, and I'm so thankful for. So he started this and had a relationship with Harold, as did Bob, who you're going to hear from shortly. But I wanted to thank particularly Elijah Cummings, who's the new chair, thank goodness, of the Oversight Committee. We will get a lot of publicity on Wednesday when we question the president's former attorney. So I want to thank them for their hard work in making this happen. I do also want to thank the city. The mayor and the city council have been terrific on this. We had a number of meetings trying to make sure the building wasn't sold, so we could put Harold's name on it. And I really want to thank Tom. He's been terrific. And if you could give him a round of applause, I appreciate it. And I want to thank the Postmaster General, also Postmaster General Brennan, who's been gracious enough to listen to me. And when I expressed some concerns about some of the situations, she and the Board of Governors were really responsive and terrific. So I want to thank them. And again, lastly, I want to thank the family. So this wonderful building, such an iconic, and Cedric and the Postmaster said this about community. This is such an important and powerful, and we found this out, of course I found it out, from your response about this building staying here and having it be named after Harold. So it's important that we keep these, and as the Postmaster said, to continue a legacy of respect for those who came before us and made this tremendous community the community that it was and is. And of course, this building wouldn't be anything without the people who worked here and worked with the community, and Harold is the embodiment of that. Or as I was told, he was referred to as Mr. McCraw, not Harold. So I apologize. And then lastly, I think often now in my current position, and I want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to represent you in the United States House of Representatives. This is just, I've had a long-term love affair with Contra Costa County, and don't tell this to the other cities, but Richmond in particular. But I'm taken more and more during these challenging times of a quote that Alexander de Tocqueville mentioned in his legendary work when he toured the United States in the late 1800s, and it applies to Harold and people like Harold. And in this era where celebrity status seems to be revered, people who do the work and assist in our communities are the people who make this country great. And de Tocqueville's quote was, "The genius to America is a simple belief that you can expect extraordinary things from ordinary people." And Harold was an extraordinary human being, and we pass on his legacy for future generations to today. So thank you so much for being here.
Next, we'll have remarks from Mayor Tom Butt, City of Richmond.
So Congressman DeSaulnier and I worked for, I think, a couple of years trying to save this as our Richmond main post office. And we tried everything. You know, we made sure that it was recognized as a historic structure, check that box. We made economic arguments, check that box. City of Richmond even offered to buy it, check that box. But you know, none of this stuff worked. And I think he had the secret weapon. I think naming this after a deserving individual, Mr. McCraw, did the trick. Now, I got to thinking, you know, for years I've had a small herd of goats. I keep at home. I keep them for fire protection. I live on a steep hill with a lot of brush. And when people hear that, they ask me, they said, you know, do you ever eat your goats? You ever butcher them and eat them? And I said, no, you can't eat an animal that you've named. You know, that's kind of the rule. Once you name them, you can't eat them. And so I think that, I think it's kind of like this, you know, once you put the name of a deserving individual, in this case, Mr. McCraw, in this building, you can't dispose of it. This building is now, for the first time, it's safe. You know, we totally wrote this off, and we figured it was a done deal and moved on to other things. And then all of a sudden we got word the building is no longer for sale. It will continue to be Richmond's main post office, and it'll continue to be the Harold D. McCraw Richmond Post Office, I hope, for a very, very long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we'll have remarks from Annie Jones and Harold McCraw Jr., family members.
Brought my oldest son up here. He works for the city of Richmond. Once again, a family member serving the community of Richmond. He made that decision about, 15 years ago. Well, let's show you how old I'm getting. Come on up and ask the grandkids. How's everybody doing? Look, I just came up here to support my family. I've been coming to this post office ever since I was a kid, and to see my grandfathers and see my name up there, all my daughters. We got special people in our family that we don't get a chance to see all the time unless it's something bad. But this is something good, so we feel good to be together. And to see my grandfather work 45 years is pretty powerful. And that's about it with me. I started at the city of Richmond in 1996. I hadn't supposed to have been only here for 999 hours. And I worked hard to get to where I'm at. And I feel good to be with my family. That's it. At this time, my auntie, which is my dad's sister, she kind of been spearheading communication with congressmen, city officials, the post office, people that my dad worked with. And it'd be better if she addressed it. And she's more eloquent than I am anyway. She loves to talk and set up everything. But you know, the funny thing is, when I
you know, sometimes I don't be thinking she love me. You know, she be saying like, "You got your speech already?" I say, "Yeah." Then turn around and say, "Well, what you doing up here anyway? What are you going up?" I be like, "Well, where's all that coming from?" Whatever. So, but anyway, all jokes aside, one thing before I introduce my auntie, my dad's great grandkids. Can you stand up? My son's wife, Uncle Ben. They done took errors over there, and wanted to recognize them. Here's my auntie.
I'd like to thank the Congressman. When I had kind of gave up, you stayed on board. You really stayed on board. And his staff members like Chanel, Jessica, and Amy, and all the other staff members. Mayor Butt, I want to say thank you. And Alice, I want to say thank you. Joanne Carpenter, thank you. And post office officials that I just met today, thank you very much. And to the many folks of Richmond that went to the town meetings and that really supported this effort to get the post office named into my big brother, Harold D. McCraw, Sr. I always have to say senior because this is where Junior, Harold D. McCraw Jr. over there. So anyway, I would like to also thank each and every one of you for attending this great event today. And on the behalf of the family, I would like to say thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you for all your hard work. I really do thank you. My name is Annie Jones. I am Harold's baby sister. I would like to talk about Harold as a brother and our history. Harold was the oldest brother. I never knew him as a child. He always had a job, 8 years old. He's 8 years older than me, but yet he always had a job. He always carried himself in a grown man's style. And he always gave little lectures. And what he liked to do for the family, he loved to cook. And my mother had a birthday party every year, and she would invite the entire church. Harold would start a week before cooking. He would cook the hams, he would cook the turkeys, he would cook the roast, then the every side order from string beans to greens and everything. Everything was ready by Saturday. The party is on a Sunday. Then he'll call me as an individual, have I fixed my little small dish? And I say, I haven't started. I'm going to start in the morning. And he said, what? Where's Brenda? Brenda bringing that potato salad. I know she's going to be late. My cousin Brenda. But we had a good time, and he loved to brag about his cooking. So Harold loved to cook. Now, we do have a little history here that I'd like to give about Harold. I know a lot of you would like to hear all his different works and everything. I gave that last time as a sister, but this time I would like to give you and introduce you to Harold's extended family. We came a long ways. This picture is our great grandfather. He was born a slave, and he emerged from Virginia and moved to Louisiana. This is my mother and her twin sister. So you can see how old the picture is. And that's their grandfather. And he was born on the plantation of Virginia, where he was also the child of the slave master. But he got to ride the horses. He got to do everything that was in the big house until slavery was abolished. And then he had to move and go away with the rest of the slaves. So they moved to Louisiana, and that was their freedom land. And he changed his name from the Evans Plantation to Williams. So his name is Moses Williams. Moses Williams, he grew up to be a strong man. He married a lady, and they worked hard. Her name was Judy. Harold, I was telling him about our history, and I had found out from the older people in our family about the passion about the history. And he knew that I had such passion about it, and he encouraged me to go ahead and find more resource. So I talked to my mother, I talked to other elders in the community of Louisiana. That little parish is only about 200 people. They still got dirt roads today. And its only main road is cemented. So I talked to them. They gave me the history about our grandfather and how hard he had to work sharecropping, and his wife, how she had to work hard herself. And when I came back and told Harold about it, he said, find more. That was my name, find more. So I went back to Louisiana to find out more information. Then I wrote it down and wrote a little article about it, and I gave it to Harold. He said, I need more, find more. And so then when I went to talk with the older people, I said, gee, I wish I know what country we were from in Africa. And some of the elders, even my mother, said, you want to know your African history? I can tell you African history, because back in their days, you couldn't say you was African. You had to be recognized as colored or whatever. You could not say you were African. So, but I can tell you about your great Moses' wife. We are from the Igbo tribe in West Africa. I brought it home. I told Harold about it. Harold said, find more. He kept telling me to find more. So I said, okay, I'll fix him. I'll go to West Africa. And most of the Igbos are located in Nigeria, but they had a war, and most of the Igbos moved to Benin. So I went to Benin, West Africa. Beautiful country, beautiful. And I found a lot of history about the Igbos. So I'm cutting everything a little bit short right now. And all the different ancestors. And I finally, when I came back, I went to Louisiana again, and I went to the burial site, and there was all the Moses and his family and his wife was all buried there. And I said, instead of spending 2 hours in the archives in Washington, D.C., why didn't I just come to the cemetery here and find out where everyone was buried? But, and then I got so excited again, I had to go back to Benin. I went back to Benin to find out more information, and that's where I saw where they have an area they call the Black Paris. It's beautiful, where some of the slaves who were captured, they ran to the swamplands and they built their homes above on the trees. So now the people still today live on the treetops and build their little huts on the treetop, and it's all surrounded by water. I mean, a lot of things, a lot of places there in Benin and Cotonou, it's all water. And I just really, really enjoyed myself. So when I came back home and I told Harold everything, plus I had double talked to him about the cemetery and everything, he said, that's enough, because you sound like you're going to move over there. You're going to move. So anyway, Harold was a tough guy, and when he also learned his history, he knew where he got his strength from, not only from his parents, but also from the ancestors. And also he always talked about the different friends and different people that he loved to be around with. And I used to ask him, I said, Harold, why don't you retire? And he said, no. He said, my life is the post office. I love the people I work with. I love the people in my surrounding. And then I get to go to lunch a long time. So he said, I never retire. So, but anyway, I retired myself from United Airlines. And that was the way my travels that I got to go and visit Africa. I did travel a lot, and I've been different countries, and I've been out of the United States quite a bit and traveling around the world. I can owe a lot of things to Harold, because he always told me how to research. I don't care what country you're going to or where you're going, you research where you're going. And to the young kids, whatever you have that Facebook on, and they send you that information, research. Just don't put your comments down. Just research and find out where that media, who's putting out the media. But anyway, I learned how to research Harold. I learned my history our family history that I'm really, really proud of. My great-grandmother, Moses' wife, she always said she was Igbo. She was an African woman. She got beat by it. They beat her so much that her slave owners, until they just started calling her crazy. And so she was known to be a crazy, crazy woman. So all her life she was saying that in the little town, they call her a crazy woman. I am happy today that I can stand before you and others and say, I am African, African American, and I can proudly say that. And thank you. Amen. And if Harold was here today, bless his heart, I know he'll be talking to you about voting. That was the first thing he always said in the House. You have a right to vote. A lot of people down in Louisiana, down south, do not have the right to vote. They're fighting for their rights. This is in the 1960s. And in our mother's house, in my father's house, you had to have an NACP card and a voter's ID to speak up. You could not speak up in my daddy's house unless you show those two IDs. So Harold, Robert, and I and other family members had their IDs. They would throw it on the table. And I said, gee, when I was a teenager, I said, I want to be a part of that, you know. But it was all the men, and they go back and forth and back and forth. But they were very strong about this voter registration. And we need to get strong about it. We can't get comfortable. We can't get comfortable because you don't want that. I don't want to talk about it, but I live in a red state now. I live in Arizona. And even now, they're even talking about voter fraud in a red state. So you better as well get ready for it. It's a solution. But if Harold was here today, that'd be one of the subjects he would talk about. That's what I'm really strong about the voter registration. So everyone, have a good day. Thank you.
All right, baby.
Good afternoon. All honor to God, giving greetings to the family, the friends, and the congressional staff. During this Black History Month, I and many members of the community appreciate and acknowledge our national and local African American leaders, such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Lavonia Dejan, which is my sister, Mr. Sylvester Greenwood, my friend, all have schools named in their honor. And now we can add Mr. Harold McCraw's name to that list in a different capacity. Harold was a dedicated advocate and activist for the city of Richmond. A product of Richmond school system, he worked hard, like Annie mentioned earlier, to accomplish the title of postmaster in Richmond, California. Now his name will enter on the post office station in his own hometown of Richmond, California. This is a great honor and legacy for his family, friends, and community. Through his leadership, employees learned the necessity of understanding each other's cultures and the need for equality and equity in the post office system. Annie gave you a lot of history of Harold's personality, I would say, as well as his character, how he learned to work hard, and he didn't only keep his work to himself, but he also led others to do the best that they could. And I was one of those people. So in having Annie as my friend, I got to meet Harold, and he taught me a lot of things that I didn't know about work ethics and everything else, but I learned those things from here. So to Representative Mark, you know I can't pronounce your last name, and staff, thank you for your hard work in introducing this into legislation and to renaming this post office Harold McCraw's honor. Now it is a reality. Thank you and God bless.
Next, we'll have Joe L. Fisher, friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am deeply honored to be here, to be able to participate in this renaming ceremony for Harold McCraw. You see, I'm down as a friend, and Harold was a true friend. I can recall I had a clothing store there, 820 McDonald Avenue. Harold was working right here along with, how many of you remember Julius Thomas, who worked under Harold? And I asked that question because You know, when you have someone in a day like that back into the late 60s and 70s, and you had someone working under another African American, speaking well of them all the time. That's what Julius would do here. He worked under Harold, working diligently, speaking well, uplifting Harold all the time. Why? Because Harold McCraw, he deserved it. He was a community person. He supported all people. He loved all people. But he had a special love for African Americans. And he didn't hide that. You know, all too often we have African Americans who want to fit, but they don't fit with their own to help and support and to have the love of everyone. And Harold exemplified that. He was a special, it makes me remember, I was the manager of a clothing store in Eastmont Mall, Smith's Clothiers. Many of you may remember Smith's Clothiers. And the highlight that would come to mind is when 3 people will walk into that store: Austin Simon, Harold McCraw, and Joe Eddie McDonald. When they would come into that store and I was the manager, I was like a little kid. I felt so big with these 3 powerful men coming into that store looking to me to outfit them. And I would tell everyone, that's Austin Simon. That's Harold McCraw. That's Joe Eddie McDonald. And they are my friends. And I felt big. So this is an honor, a legacy that's well deserving. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all part of history being made, and I thank you for being here. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate all of the ones that helped to make this possible. Have a great afternoon.
Wow, thank you for those powerful words. Next, we'll have Bob Campbell, former assemblyman and friend.
What are you smiling about? It took a long time to get up here. By the way, the reason I had to sit back there, Harpreet told me he didn't want me up here with you guys. He said, you got your Levi's on, you can't be up here with the rest of the people all dressed up. This time I'll be in. All right. I'll be brief, I promise. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Congressman, all you guys from the post office and everything else, thank you for this thing. I knew Harold in junior high school. We graduated, so I knew you before your kids did. I want you to know that. When his sister, and before, I didn't know him before his sister, but everybody else I did know him before. I just want to say one thing before I go on and say a few words about Harold. This is a hard thing to do. Anyone who's been involved in government, trying to get something named for somebody after it's been turned down about 25 or 30, 50 times, you did a great job, Mark. I just want to say thank you very much. This wouldn't have happened without you. I really mean that. One little editorial. I think Mark is doing an outstanding job as a congressman. I had to say that. He gave me $25 to do that. Yeah. When you're retired, you got to make some money some way, right? Let me just say this about Harold. Harold was one of those persons that was born good. I mean, he was in junior high school and high school. Everybody liked him, and he liked everybody. And in those days, we had neighborhoods. You know, each grammar school had a baseball team, and we played Steege and Peary's. And I went to Nystrom, which was down there in the sticks, in the middle of town, by the railroad tracks and all that sort of. Then I moved to Ashland Village. I went uptown. We had lawn in the backyard, so it was a big difference between living on 9th and Cutting and down in Ashland Village. But yeah, Harold, everybody liked him. He was smart. He got great grades in school. He was a great athlete. He involved himself in school. And all of us had jobs in those days. I worked at a place in Richmond on 8th and McDonald called Buy Right Market on 8th and McDonald. And we would see each other because people worked in service stations and cleaned, swept floors and all that stuff. Harold was involved with everything he could possibly get involved with. I can honestly say this. I don't think I ever knew a person in school that didn't like him. Wherever he went, you know, Richmond still has a little bit of that division stuff in it. You know, you had the Hill people, You had us poor folks in the housing projects down in a certain part of town, and sometimes they didn't talk to you when you went down the street because you looked a little funny to them, right? And if you're mixed, so I'm half Hispanic and half Irish, so no one knew what I was, so I'm not sure I was accepted at anybody's house at the time. So, but that's the way it was. That's the way it was. And I want to be very brief because those of you who didn't know Harold, really know him, you really missed a wonderful, wonderful person. He, excuse me here a second, I just thinking back about him, and the best thing that could have happened to that man, who was really one of our people in this town that we all looked up to, is the name of a building after him. I was in legislature for 16 years. No one ever named a school after me or nothing. You know, so, but that's great. That's the best thing you could possibly do, because every time you walk by this building, and it's going to be here for, as Tom Butt said, it's going to be here for a very long time. And go in there and look around and all that stuff. We used to take all their brochures, and we were smart, and pass them out and put them on people's doors, stacks of them. Don't tell anybody I said that. It's a long time. You can't put me in jail now for doing stuff like that. But it was just being smart. But yeah, when you come out of the building, look at what Harold McCraw, and just think about this. I really mean it. We had a large high school. We had 3 periods, 3 sessions. When my graduating class in '56, Harold's in my class, we had almost 1,000 students graduating with a 50% dropout rate. So we had a large, large class. And wherever you went in town, wherever you worked, there were certain people you looked for. And when we had reunions, and whatever we had, we always looked for Harold. When you went to a reunion, the seat around Harold was more people around him talking to him. No one ever talked to some of us other people. It'd be maybe 2 people there, our girlfriends or whoever we took to the reunion. Harold always had a lot of people around him, mostly girls, by the way. A very nice looking young man. Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Hello, everyone. It took us a long time, but it happened, and I'm so grateful. When I became a station manager in Oakland, it was if my career was being managed. I was sent to Richmond in 1980 as manager customer service level 21. Later, though, I found out that Mr. Simon, MSC manager, and Mr. McCraw, level 24 postmaster in Richmond, where they had both started their postal careers, had a plan to not stop with just their success, but to help other minorities to promote to higher levels. Looking back on that time, they had to endure a lot for our success, being part of that. At one time, believe it or not, there were 17 black postmasters in our MSC, levels 18 to 24. That took work and dedication, remember, during that time. We that had worked for Mr. McCraw in Richmond was in demand and promoted to MSC jobs other than postmasters. I'm sure there are many stories that the retired and working postmasters can share today. They were very successful, as many working and retired postmasters and employees know. It's unfortunate that they didn't live to see this day, but they were very successful folks, very successful. Mr. McCraw, and by the way, I never could call him Harold. I never did. It was always Mr. McCraw. I never called him Harold. Mr. McCraw was not only my boss, but he became friends. I loved that he respected my faith. He sometimes would slip and mention something that he knew I would disapprove of. And of course, I would leave. That's what he wanted me to do. Another thing that I feel that helped me throughout my career was that Mr. McCraw insisted that I respect the contract and the union representatives. And I don't think I left any enemies, but that was one thing he always said to me: we signed that contract too. That's the type of person he was. I enjoyed so working for Mr. McCraw, because I knew that all the ones that they had prepped to move up, you don't forget it. You never forget it. You will always remember that. And I have been really blessed and special to have been at the front end of their push to make us all successful. And I thank God for that today. I just want to sit and take all of this in, because this is great. Take it all in, okay? I only know, and I could be wrong, but in dealing with the organization, NAPOS Postmasters, from what I can tell, we only have one other black postmaster where a postal facility was named after him in the United States, was Vito Reed from St. Louis, Missouri. So you see, this is special, folks, and I just love it. I just love it. I want to say to each of you, thank you so much for being here. We was wondering, could we reach enough people? Levada called, can we reach enough people? But you're here, and that says something from Mr. McCraw. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Golden. Next, we'll have remarks from retired Oakland Host Postmaster Larry Barnes.
Yes, retirement is nice. Some of you may join me real soon. To the Congressman and staff and the mayor and U.S. Postal Service and Mr. McCraw's family members and friends, thank you so much for the invitation. Mom always said, you know, everybody don't have to be nice to you, but when people are nice to you, respond accordingly. And I was coming down the freeway today and I saw an accident and I was complaining about the traffic. And pretty soon the Highway Patrol let us through and we got through the traffic jam and arrived here at the post office. And when I arrived, I said, you know, I was complaining about the traffic, but I only made it here because of the grace of God. So I'm thankful for being here. Mr. McCraw, he was a different kind of leader. A leader you don't see too much today. He was good at vision casting, he was good at coaching, and he was good at delegating. And when I look at this building, I think about the University of Mr. McCraw. And we called it that because everyone that came in contact with him went on to better things. But there's a couple of things I'd just like to share with you that comes back to remembrance with Mr. McCraw. I remember one day I came through that door and I was going to see a customer in North Richmond. And Mr. McCraw was coming up those same steps. And he said, "Where you going, young man?" He always called me young man. I said, "Thank you for that." And I said, "I'm going to see a customer in North Richmond." And I said, "May I use your staff car?" He said, "Sure." And he broke out laughing. I couldn't figure out what in the world he was laughing about. But I got into North Richmond because I didn't know anything about Richmond. Me and that staff car. And all of a sudden, a couple people came around the staff car and they asked me, you know, "What are you looking for?" And I told them. And they said, "You haven't found it yet?" I said, "Not yet." And they told me, said, "Well, you haven't found it. Between 9 and 5 o'clock, you probably won't find it." So I came back and I told Mr. McCraw, and I said, "Mr. McCraw, well, I know you was really laughing when I went to North Richmond." He said, "Well, yeah, young man, I just didn't want to tell you. Why you think I don't drive that car?" I applied for this job he had. So Marie always called me his son. So I go down and I see Mr. McCraw down in his office, and Mr. McCraw said, "Well, sit down, have a seat." And I took a seat. He says, "Well, I just want to tell you one thing." "Okay." He says, "You applied for this job." I said, "Yes, I did." He said, you know, I really don't want you. He said, but you were the best qualified. And I said, whew, thank you. So we had a short conversation. So right after that, I came right down the same little steps. I went over to the post office on Chancellor, and my counterpart was over there. And I said, look, you know, I just had a meeting with Mr. McCraw, and he really made me feel bad in the very beginning. He said, what did he tell you? He said, well, I didn't want you for the job, but you're the best qualified. I said, well, look, I'll tell you what we're going to do, him and I. I said, Mr. McCraw come to work about 4 o'clock in the morning. He's there every day after the holiday. He is on Saturdays. I said, from this day forward, Mr. McCraw is not going to work harder than we work. We're going to beat him to work. We're not going to leave till he leaves. So I had that meeting. I came back, and I made an appointment to go see him. I said, Mr. McCraw, starting tomorrow morning, you've been working pretty hard, so you don't have to come in on Saturdays. You don't have to come on the day after holiday. You don't have to come early on the Mondays. We're going to take care of that. And from that day forward, I said, I will never let him work harder than me. And so when you be around Mr. McCraw, he's contagious. So you wind up taking some of his characteristics throughout your career. And as a couple other speakers said that they called him Harold, I could never call him Harold. It's always, to me, was Mr. McCraw, out of respect. And so one day we had to go to a meeting down San Diego, and the district sent out an email saying casual dress. Okay. So I told Mr. McCraw, I said, Mr. McCraw, you know we're going to San Diego. He says casual dress. He said, young man, let me tell you something. I've been waiting all my life to wear a tie and a shirt and a jacket. He said, I am never going to go to this meeting without a tie. We get into San Diego, and everybody, all the district managers, and everybody got on, you know, casual clothes and things of that nature. And here we come from Oakland. And the first thing they say, well, here come that Oakland gang. So everybody from Oakland got a tie on and a jacket, right? But they never could understand that we just couldn't adapt to that. Not that we were slighting anyone. It's just that when we were taught, we were doing things a little differently. So I have a fond memory of Mr. McCraw. And even today, if he was living today, I can call him 24 hours a day and say, look, I need some advice about something. He would give you an answer. One of the other qualities I want to share with you real quickly, and that is that leaders don't have this too often today. And no reflection of everyone else, right? Leaders don't ask questions too often. Leaders often ask questions now for intimidation. But Mr. McCraw asks questions for learning purposes and training purposes. Because I remember sometime he would ask me, he said, well, young man, why did you make that decision? And I told him. And I said, well, why did you ask? He said, I just wanted to know. But that's the way he was. But he used that as a technique to develop people. And I'm fond of him. I always will be. And even to this day, moving forward, I've always respected him and the people that he developed. There are a lot of people came through the University of Harold McCraw in the same building. So I want to thank you for the family. I want to thank you for the invitation. Postal Service, I want to thank you all. And I still buy stamps, all right? Because I don't want to buy my retirement check, so don't worry about it, right? But I still buy stamps. But I do want to thank, especially the employees. And one final thing, there's another thing he taught me. And I used to process grievances for Mr. McCraw. That was my one of my projects. And he told me one day, and it hit me like a rock. I had made a decision about something, and he asked me about it, and he said, well, young man, you might want to think about it. But anyway, so after I made the decision, he said, look, I want you to remember one thing. You're going to always need employees. You're going to always need employees. That stuck with me for the whole time when I was in Richmond. And I want to thank him, and I want to thank the family for allowing to share his time with us. I want to thank the Postal Service for doing such an outstanding job. Thank you and have a blessed day.
Now we'll have additional remarks from the Honorable Congressman Mark DeSaulnier.
I don't know how I got 2 bites of the apple, but I do want to tell you, after listening to all the speakers, how graced I feel to be part of this. So I'm just really thankful. I do want to recognize all the employees of the Postal Service. They have a challenge right now. Their business model has changed. So if you want to help Harold and keep this building, use the U.S. Postal Service. And then I just have to clarify for the Ethics Committee, I didn't give Campbell $25 to say that. I actually owe him money because for years he's been charging me $1 a year to have 2 prints that he had in his office in the state capitol of Dr. King and Mahatma Gandhi, and they're in my office in D.C. So I haven't paid you, but I know I'll get a bill. Right, the cost of a payday lender. And I want to recognize Joan, too, Carpenter. She's really the conscience and the spirit, oftentimes, of Richmond. So thank you, Joan. I love you. Thank you.
Now we'll have the unveiling and presentation of the plaque.